I'm excited to be joined by Lisa Hayashi here today. Lisa is the visionary founder of Vision and Voice and also the Vice President of Marketing at Mimic. Lisa, absolute pleasure to have you here with me. Why don't you maybe kickstart and give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yes, thanks. Hi, Katie. I'm very happy to be on. And you are right. I founded Vision and Voice about 6 years ago. That is when I got my start in cyber. I was with a company and I was new to cyber. I had a sort of an unconventional background. Started my career in IT and networking and infrastructure. Starting a company very early stage that was called Brocade. It had a really amazing IPO. And I was super young at the time. I had no idea what I was doing, but I gained an incredible experience by watching hyper growth turn into something big and huge and wonderful. And so after that, I was in sales for a couple of years at AT&T and got sort of all that sales training that you go through all the different courses and learn all the things about how to be a salesperson and how to wear nylons to work. And I mean, I am old, so like it was a really interesting time. But good experience to understand when you are in marketing what your sales team goes through, what's required of them, the trainings that they go through. So that was fun. But I knew it was going to be short lived because my passion was to be a bit more creative in life. And I got the opportunity to work with one of the founders of Brocade because he started investing in a ton of startups after he made all his winnings through Brocade. And so we put a lot of structure together around investing in early stage startups, as well as his philanthropy work that he did, and his own personal portfolio of wealth management was something that I was part of managing. And so what was called at the time was family office management. And it really was an incredible experience because not only now do I have this experience of an IPO, I've got the experience of working and becoming a salesperson, but then now understanding more about what happens in the realm of venture capital, and early stage funding up through growth. So that was kind of a non-conventional path. And after I decided, after 8 or 9 years, I was working with the family office, I decided I wanted to get back into marketing. And I did some consumer marketing at a really old brand called Igloo. And it was, I kind of call it my marketing MBA program. We did digital transformation for Igloo. And, it was a cooler company. And we were selling boxes of plastic to people at like crazy volumes, like, Walmart and Target and all these companies are our customers. And so it was massive, really a cool experience. But again, in true fashion, I looked at myself and I was like, is this what I'm passionate about? Is this what I want to do forever? Am I continuing to grow? And I did realize that Silicon Valley startup pace was really interesting to me. And so I connected with a venture capitalist friend of mine and mentor that helped me get into cyber. And so for the past 7 years now, I have been leading marketing at companies of various sizes. I've done some consulting work for cybersecurity startups as well. And so I've sort of found my passion and I think my home. I think this is it for me. I love what I do in cyber. I love the fight. I love trying to differentiate in a very noisy space, very great tech. So that's a long story, but
But
you
exciting
asked
one.
me to interview somebody older, so.
No, I think the thing is though, it's you had a really interesting path into security, like you've just demonstrated, and I think kind of what's really exciting about this space is the fact that it's impossible to become obsolete in the sense that it's constantly evolving. There's always new tech. It's going to stay relevant, and because we're just so kind of like clouds heavy and everything's just online and digital, like it's always going to be a thing, and there's always going to be something new. And especially when you're in that marketing kind of, and you're being able to work with like companies that are really like pioneering and forging the way forward with new tech, It's exciting, right? I mean, why don't you tell us what kind of, because you've obviously recently joined the team at Mimic. Sounds like some exciting things going on there. I mean, before we kind of deep dive into the world of vision and voice, what is it that kind of drew you over to the team, and what is it that you're up to there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, when you are on sort of the back half of your career, you really want to choose very carefully where you spend your time and energy. And, I am going to be that person that's going to work extremely hard if I'm interested in something. And it doesn't matter what I do. I'm going to be passionate. I'm going to put the hours in because that's just my personality. And so I wanted to be very careful about where I spent my energy and who I did it with. So I did a lot of research. I was talking to a lot of companies, and I found the team at Mimic through a few different people who were like, you should really look at this company. They were recently funded by Google Ventures, Ballistic Ventures, Teammate. They are a company that has DNA from incredible history and acumen. So our CEO founded Shape Security. He had a team of people that he's brought with him here to Mimic. Some of the other folks on the team have had really successful CISO roles at places like Walmart and Chase, Citibank. So there's just a lot of wonderful experience that I was able to really dig into and meet with and learn about. And that was compelling to me because not only were they experienced, they understood what winning looked like
Yeah.
and what great looked like. And they also, the team is doing something disruptive and different against a use case that is really important. So, what we do at Mimic is we are approaching the ransomware challenge. And so many companies out there talk about ransomware SaaS startups as one of their use cases. We're very focused on looking at it different. We tackle creating an application immutability strategy, which means not sort of looking at endpoint, but really looking at the critical applications in the enterprise that typically get attacked by modern ransomware adversaries. And so we are approaching it differently, and we are, we've got tech that works, we've got customers. And so now it's time to come in and figure out how we message around this and how we bring this to market and scale it. And so I'm very excited to be part of it. It's been about four months now, and so much to do when you're early stage like
Yeah.
this. But it's a great team to be working with. So
Yeah, and sounds very exciting. I mean, ransomware alone is like I don't think people realize how big of a market in security it is, because it's just got so many touch points. But definitely an exciting kind of few years ahead for the team, and kind of, I suppose, the trajectory that you could be going on there is simply incredible, and that's the exciting thing about the space. And kind of, what I really wanted to talk about as well today, Lisa, because how well, and this is the entire reason of how we met, right? We kind of we were at RSA, and kind of fortunate enough to come along to a Vision and Voice event. And I think while you've been doing all of these incredible things, working at these great startups and being part of the journey there, you've been kind of creating a community that's like, been having such a kind of a significant and positive contribution towards probably one of the biggest and most challenging kind of things that really is within the market security, and that's kind of, supporting, I suppose, the equality, the diversity piece within the space. I mean, to start off with, what sparked the idea to launch that? How did you go from kind of coming in and being able to kind of drive the marketing side within a business, and then go, you know what, I'm going to give myself a second job, and I'm
yeah.
going to I'm going to go and do all of these great things.
It's interesting. There are forces that happen sort of outside of what you can even imagine, right? Sometimes. So when I was at Safeguard Cyber, I was on the executive leadership team, and I had a couple people on the team with me that would say things like, "Hey, we need to recruit people with experience in cyber, and we need talent here that has X amount of of years experience in cyber. And I kept hearing that over and over as we were thinking about, going into our Series B and what we wanted to do with funding and all of that. And so I was sitting there thinking, I'm in marketing and I don't have 5 years experience in cyber, yet I'm sitting in the room. So there's a reason I'm here. She's great at marketing, but she doesn't have the experience. Those were things I was hearing at that point in my career. And so I kept thinking, when is my leadership team or my peers on my leadership team going to stop saying she is new to cyber? Like, at what point does that flip? And how do I prove to the market that I am technically qualified, not only to, you know, create campaigns or create content, but to be, intelligent enough in the space to be a thought leader, to, drive forward, bleeding edge innovation. And so I now, I, I, I came to the point where I said, okay, well, I have to do something about this, because if I'm feeling uncomfortable in these meetings and I want things to change, I have to do something. I can't be passive.
Yeah.
And the other thing that would happen is I would hear and read things like on National Women's Day or something, people would post these things about some cybersecurity leaders that were really quite incredible. And I saw, and I'd read about their stories and I thought, wow, they are trailblazing. But the numbers that I kept hearing were still way too low.
Yeah.
And and then all of a sudden it's COVID, right? And so then the way that you can find people, the talent you can acquire, it all changed. You didn't have to have people working in office, so you could extend your reach to do more effective searches for people. And so all of those things were sort of ruminating in my mind, and I was trying to solve for, like, what does this mean? And I think, I decided I need to build community, and there's ways to do that virtually now. And so people that I worked with started saying, yeah, let's start something. Let's start bringing people together. Let's find a niche and a reason and a through line to bring things together and make change in a challenge, with a challenge like helping women to be more interested in cybersecurity and helping them to join, but not just to join, right? Because here's what I found and thought about a lot is there's so few leaders
Yeah.
in representation there. And so are we hitting a ceiling? Are we not going for it? Are there just not enough women? And so when maybe there is a fair and equitable hiring process, there's just not enough candidates that are applying. So those are all the things I was thinking about. But really, there was something else. At the time, I had a teenage daughter, and I was watching her behavior on social media, and I was watching my older son's behavior on social media. And I thought, so interesting. Women are seeking a huge amount of validation on social. And I just thought, gosh, what is that going to manifest to and look like in the future? So, you do an Instagram post and you get, you know, 500 likes, and 250 of them are talking about, the comments are talking about how beautiful you are or how pretty you are, how hot you are. And I was like, God, that content sucks. We got to tell better stories. We've got to have much more interesting content. We need to show young women what really good and interesting conversations look like. So
Yeah.
that's sort of the impetus of why we started having the conversations, highlighting great stories,
Yeah.
and being the hype squad for the women that are positive, that
Yeah.
are affecting change, that are starting companies. Like, go get them, right? Like, let's talk about it. Let's understand what qualities you have that are creating the opportunity to lead a company, to found a company, right? To build a security practice that might be different and more equitable. I've
Yeah.
had conversations with a lot of men around the same time that were leading their cybersecurity teams and saying to me things like, I have to do things in a fundamentally different way to make sure that harassment doesn't occur on my team. And I'm responsible for that. And those are the men, and the mentors that we want to highlight in places like Vision and Voice, because that's awesome. Right. And I want to
Absolutely.
know and hear the hard stories, but I want the awesome stories because those motivate me personally. So anyway, that's my story, and that's why we started Vision and Voice, and that's why we get excited about getting together and sharing those types of stories.
Yeah, and I think kind of one thing that I really love about what you're doing as well is it's super accessible, but it's also a case that you get the executives in the room, you get the leaders and the people that have pioneered and they've been there and they've done that, and then you also encourage them to identify who are your up and comers, who are the people that you can see that have a career here, and let's make sure that we're creating an environment where they feel welcomed and where they feel like they're going to gain kind of value. And I think that the inclusivity piece there, because a lot of the time they're tailored to really really junior resources and people, individuals trying to get more women into tech
Mm.
from the grassroots, or sometimes they're just pure kind of the executive, the thought leadership, and sometimes that in between can be where it gets a little bit lost. And I think what's really nice is you kind of bring those two together, and you've also grown the community really really quickly. I think that's kind of something that's really impressive as well. I mean, you mentioned the importance of allies. I think ultimately, kind of, not everybody recognizes how important it is to show up, even if the cause doesn't personally impact you. And then obviously, kind of, you've got the women that of course there and coming and fighting for the cause. I mean, what kind of response have you seen there? Because, like I say, you've been able to scale at a pretty impressive rate.
Right, let's talk about a couple things that you brought up. So first off, you said, that there is the up and comer component to Vision and
Yeah,
Voice, and I failed to talk about really like what Vision and Voice really does. So we are a nonprofit, and we do virtual events. Oftentimes, that's how we started. So those would be coffee chats, and we would bring on really great speakers, and we'd encourage our members to join us. And we'd often encourage them to bring an up and comer and have them register. And then the other thing that we do is we'll do these in-person events alongside of things like RSA and events like Black Hat. And so those in-person events are often sponsored by our community, and we have a panel of speakers where we highlight the stories and talk about both, technical as well as, personal things that leaders need to learn about and understand. And so when we do those in-person events, we really make a conscious effort to have our leaders bring their up and comers with them to the events. And so that's intentional, and it really is something that sparked a lot of interest early on. We had some serendipitously, we had some really cool people join Vision and Voice at RSA, at one of the first events we did. They were female leaders in the industry. They were VCs and CISOs from companies like Humana and Sally Mae, and so they came in, and they've known each other and kind of grown up together in cyber. And when they were in the room, they said, "This is refreshing and different. It's not a bunch of people on the panel that are close to retirement. It's some of the youngest and most interesting people that have unique backgrounds and struggles that are very different." And so I think hearing from the seasoned security leaders that this was so refreshing was really exciting to us. And so we made a very conscious effort to help up and comers gain access to leaders, but it's also bi-directional. The leaders really love to know what people are going through. The next generation of leaders, what's that look like, and how can they help? Which is
yeah,
really a cool piece of Vision and Voice, because people want to understand what they can do so that the next set of leaders have it better, not easier but better.
yeah. No, and I think that's what's really awesome about it, and that sense of community in the room. But it was that value add, and it kind of even just like that networking opportunity. It can be really hard to get access to some of those leaders when you're not in a room with them, and I think the other thing is it makes them more human, and I know that can kind of sound ridiculous because you're like, well, of course they are, but at the same time it can be so intimidating. Like it's, when especially when you're kind of really building up your career and you're looking up at people and thinking, wow, they've done X, Y, and Z, that's so impressive. It can feel really daunting to then approach them, and unless you've got that face-to-face time and suddenly you're like, oh, you're just like me, you've been through how I feel, wait, I'm not alone in this. And I think that's inspiring. I mean, because you mentioned also a couple of different things there, but like, what when you look at cybersecurity leaders, obviously a lot of women are already aware of their own challenges and maybe what some of their direct counterparts are, and they probably know that there may be some things that need changing. But from what you've seen and from what your events have generated, what would you kind of say like leaders can do regardless of their gender to be more inclusive for their teams and their pipelines and as they're building businesses?
One of the things I heard recently that was valuable to me is to make inclusion part of your remit. And not just inclusion, but um, policies around communication and style and equity. So those practices and policies are, come easy when you're in a huge corporation sometimes, and you have teams that are working on that. But oftentimes in cyber, there's so many different size companies that are out there that may not have all of the resources. And so as leaders, I think we have to be conscious about the stage of company we're in and the practice that we have to be much more inclusive, to be smarter about how we're hiring. It's not just about hiring your friends or your friends' kids. It's about, casting a much wider net and hiring and insisting on the best quality of work. And so those are some of the things that like I think help quite a bit. We talk a lot about, diversity and hitting numbers, but I think the challenge and the opportunity is to figure out how to have the best candidate for the job and to be conscious about diligence, not lazy, when we are vetting humans out to do the work, because it is our responsibility to be excellent at the companies that we're at. But that doesn't mean, ignoring the fact that to be excellent, you have to, really broaden your scope of things that you're responsible for. We talk about this a lot, Katie. So if you want to be a great leader, you have to understand what the metrics are that matter to your board. Even if you are a level 1 SOC analyst and you're just getting started, you know, especially if you are, a VP of engineering coming up the ranks. What matters to the company to make the company successful? So like having those skills and understanding what some of the leaders need to know to move the business forward is really important. Also, you have to have that practice of being excellent and finding, the right candidates and, making sure that we're developing our humans and our team in really, effective ways. So it's about not working less. It's about, I think, adding more to what we have to be responsible for, but it's important. And then ultimately, when I talk to companies and leaders that are thriving and that have great cultures, they're they're doing those things,
Yeah,
right? And considering the human component and we're not exhausting people. If you want to have great talent and diversity, you have to have programs around maternity leave. You have
yeah,
to make people feel like they're going to be able to come back, right? Or they're going to be hired in even if they've taken time off to make their family a priority. So I think it's a lot of conversations that we need to have. But as you said, we have those real conversations, and we do it with a spin. We talk a lot about what does work and what has worked versus what doesn't work,
Yeah.
or who, has, I try to avoid the conversations about companies and cultures that suck, because that takes a lot of energy out of the room. We want to talk about you know,
Yeah.
the good stories so we can emulate them right where
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah, and I think it creates the inspiration as well, doesn't it? I think you can always look at what's going wrong, but then that can lack that. Oh well, if everyone's going wrong, how do you do it right? When you're talking about what's going right, you can be like, well, if they can do it, I can do it, surely, right? Like that,
Yep.
and I think that mentality is great, and I think that's what's so special about initiatives like this and communities like this, because I think the other thing people can often see it as I don't know how else to put it other than sometimes they can feel like you can go to certain things and it can feel like you're being lectured and you're being patronized and you're kind of, being told, oh, you're doing this and that wrong. Whereas, when you're in a room like this, it's about saying, this is what some people are doing great and this is why it's going so great. And this is how you can incorporate it if this is what's important to you. But it should be important to you because here are all the benefits of it. And I think when you come with that tonality and you just kind of really have loads of people in the room. I mean, I remember walking out of that room feeling pumped, and I was like, "This is great! Oh, I can't wait to get involved." And as you know, I immediately was reaching out, and I was like, "Lisa, how do we get involved? Like, let's do it." And that's what that room inspires.
I love that so much. And it's interesting, we try to have different events where we need speakers and we need content. And it's wonderful to be part of Vision and Voice because nobody says no.
Yeah,
Everybody that we talk to wants to participate. It's a low lift, to be honest. And that I think is important, right?
yeah,
Even our advisory board and our board of directors, they want to do more.
yeah,
We really want to think about ways. And at Black Hat this year, we're going to have a sit down session with a lot of the advisors and board members to talk about like what the future looks like for Vision and Voice. Because here's what we do now, right? We've got the Friday coffee chats. Those are going to change a little bit. It's going to be an Ask Me Anything session so that you have access. So the advisory board and the larger board is committed to be on, cameras on, and we're going to be pulling in other folks to join us, up and comers and leaders. And we're going to have a set of topics that we're going to just be talking about. But the goal is so that up and comers can have access to leaders
yeah,
in a monthly coffee chat, and we can have those conversations. You can get your questions answered. It's not just for cyber leaders, it can be for sales leaders, marketing leaders, and so I think that's what's going to be the other difference maker for Vision and Voice. It's about community. It's about people getting to know each other and building networks. And it's not about just the CISOs that just want to talk about their tech stack together. It's a little different
yeah,
than that. And it's intentional. And then the other things that we are working on and that I think is really important is utilizing data to tell our stories and to demonstrate improvement in the mix of leaders in cybersecurity. We've partnered with a company called Delvrisk, and we have some data, and we're massaging that data to turn it into some really great content that tells a story about what kind of industries women lead in, what some of the purchasing power looks like in with cyber leaders, what industries they've come from, and perhaps what roles that they've held, their tenure in roles, so that when we have more and more conversations about the efficacy of Vision and Voice and the impact it has on the industry, we can use data to tell that story. So
yeah. No, awesome. And this is kind of the exciting thing. Like, you're still kind of in the start of the journey. You've been building something great. The momentum's continuing to pick up, and there's a lot of people wanting to get involved. And like Black Hat, we're very proud to be one of the sponsors there, and that's going to be a very exciting event. And obviously, what we'll do when we post this is we'll kind of share the link so people can find out a bit more about what we're doing there. But what kind of I want to ask Lisa is, there's probably a few people that have listened to this episode today. They either might want to attend things or they might also be like, how can I get involved? So, I mean, kind of from your perspective, what's the best way for people to come to you and say, look, I'm interested, I want to do something here. What can I do?
Thank you, Katie. Yes. So there's a few ways. So if you're attending Black Hat this year, I encourage you to sign up for the Vision and Voice Rise and Shine Breakfast. It'll be at the Foundation Room on the 5th at 9 a.m. We've got an incredible panel of women speaking. I can share. We've got Cynthia Kaiser, former FBI leader, incredible talent there. Nabila Bari will be joining us, Galina Antonova, and Emily O'Carroll. And all of these women are either leading a cyber practice, founders of companies, and really effective and incredible. Amy DeSalvatore from Night Dragon, who is one of our moderators for the day. She comes from an incredible background of leadership in cybersecurity, and now she's at a VC that supports vision and voice in amazing ways. And so the team at Night Dragon's incredible. And so a lot of the other companies that are sponsoring and have sponsored before, or like Elicity, Silicon Valley Bank, Key Factor, just a really great lineup. We've got the Cyber Guild community that's joining us and helping to sponsor GuidePoint, Carasoft. So, huge name companies and partners that are coming in and saying, hey, listen, this is definitely worth our time and support. So feel very honored that it's growing. So that's Black Hat. And if you're interested in getting involved in the monthly Ask Me Anything sessions, that's where there's no cost to attend. We just want participation. Cameras on is all I ask, and being willing to ask the questions that you have always been nervous about asking. That happens monthly, last Friday of each month. And you can sign up on the Vision and Voice website, which is visionandvoice.community. And, there's newsletter signups on there as well. So we'll keep you guys informed of what up and coming events and opportunities look like. It's, if you want to talk to me personally and you want to think of, you can think of something interesting you'd like to do together, it's easy to get a hold of me at lisa@visionandvoice.community.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
No, great, Lisa. And honestly, like I say, really exciting things that you're doing. And what I'll do is, we'll make sure to tag some of these things that you've mentioned there. So the Black Hat event and kind of the page, and obviously we can also make sure that kind of you're accessible on there as well, so people can reach out. But honestly, Lisa, thank you so much for joining. Like I say, your vision of kind of raising up the next generation of females and kind of it's inspiring, and it's definitely necessary, and I think it has such a positive impact. And to our listeners, whether you're a woman building in cyber, you're someone trying to uplift diverse talent, I highly recommend checking out Vision and Voice. Consider joining the community, attend the events, especially when you've got a remote kind of virtual event like that. There's literally never any harm in getting involved and trying it out and seeing kind of what you can gain from it. But as always, don't forget to subscribe, share this with your security peers, get connected with us on LinkedIn. But that's it for today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Lisa, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you all next time for joining for conversations that are shaping cyber.